I. What's this one? X squared plus 4. Then x to the 4th minus 4x squared plus 16 for 1 mark because it just works in the formula. What about this one? Seven a minus 5b 49a squared plus 35 AB, good, didn't fool anybody there, plus 25b squared. Nice. Is that one done? Okay. 13. Pardon? 2x plus 3, 2x plus 1. Nice. What about this one? 3y plus 16 and y plus 1. Nice. Making that whole first page, there was a couple of 2's in there. 2, 4, 6. Everything else was 1. So it's 14 plus 3, making that first page out of 17. It's recorded. You can go back and check. It'll show back up. What was 15? 3c minus 7 squared, or 3c minus 7, 3c minus 7. It'll show back up. I have the utmost faith. Or not. Or it won't. Which is yet more proof of the garbage with which I have been shackled. And this one's really tricky. I'm going to make it out of 2. X plus 4, x squared plus 2x plus 4. That doesn't look anything like that, does it? So you get an extra mark for that one because this one's really hard because you had a couple of choices, right? The smart choice would have been to substitute that with another letter. Then it becomes a cubed plus 8. Then you run that through the formula, yes? Which is a plus 2, a squared minus 8a, or sorry, not 8a, 2a plus 4, right? And then what do you do with all the a's? Replace them with x plus 2. So that becomes x plus 2 plus 2, which is x plus 4. That becomes x plus 2 squared, which is x squared plus 4x plus 4, minus 2x plus 2, so minus 2x minus 4 plus 4. Then you just collect all your like terms, which I, of course, will do in a moment when my quality machine allows me to. X plus 4. These 4's cancel. So x squared, 4 minus 2 is plus 2x plus 4. So you get an extra mark for that one because it's tricky. And then this last one for 1 mark was Is that even on your guys' sheet? You have 17. Okay, what is it? 3x minus 1. 2x minus 1. Thank you. 6x minus 1. Excellently done. For 1 mark, making the back page out of 4, making the whole thing out of 21. Give you some mark out of 21. The next thing you hand in to me, I will ask you to write that on it. Oakley dokley. Oakley dokley. I'll give you a moment to total that up. And then turn to page 63. On page 63, up at the top, in very small writing, very quickly, I would like to remind you all of algebra, which is, of course, why the mermaid was embarrassed in math class. All right? Screw you. So, everybody, please make sure that you can do the following. I'm going to ask you to do 2 things before we carry on. Now, if you are from another country, you already know how to do this, undoubtedly. So you will have to, as usual, sit for a moment while we catch up. Let us do so. Everybody do this. Don't write it down if you don't need to, but everybody can do that algebra in their head or on paper, yes? More important that you can do it on paper. What would you do first? Subtract 3. So, in grade 7, when Mrs. Badcrumble taught you algebra, she would have written, or he, minus 3, right? And then made you rewrite 2x equals 8. Then you would divide both sides by 2, and x would equal 4, yes? Now, hopefully, somewhere along the line, one of your math teachers, and for a great many of you in here, that was me, said, don't be silly. You don't need to do minus 3. You can just take that and move it over here, and then change the sign, yes? So you ended up with 2x equals 8 still. Somebody throw me a pen from the back of the room, please. This pen sucks. Don't hit anyone in the head. Go for a high arc. Nice. So, everybody can do that, yeah? All right. So now, what would you do to solve what I'm about to show you, okay? How do we get rid of plus 3? Subtract. How do we get rid of times 2? Divide. So how do we get rid of square root? Square, right? So if I square this side and I square this side, I get what? X equals 9. Everyone agree? All right. So everybody can do this, right? Okay. Now, what I want you to do is in front of you on your sheets, you have 1A and 1B, and there's a lot of space, okay? I want you to attempt on your own to just solve 1A. What do I mean by solve? What has to be by itself? x. You already know how to do this. There are some finer points that I'm going to teach you in a moment, but right now you should be able to get to x by itself. Try not to use all of the space. Try to keep it down to a couple of steps, because you only need a couple of steps to solve this. Okay? Go. I am foolishly going to attempt once again to make my computer work. I know it's dumb of me, but I keep trying. All right, everybody should be done. Yeah, well, that's all I wanted you to do. All right, no, I said 1A. All right, so knowing what you already know about math, what was your first step in 1A? You moved the 5. Everyone agrees? Yes. Why? Because you want to get the x by itself, and that 5 is not near the x, yes? Okay, so your first step was to get rid of the 5. Your goal with that first step was to isolate the radical. Because the radical is where my x is, yes? So all of you moved the 5. Either you brought it over and did minus 5, or you did minus 5, minus 5. Either way, you ended up at this point. The square root of 2x minus 1 equaled 7. Right? Now, what was your next logical step? Why? There's a square root. We have to get rid of that, yes? So your next step was to square to eliminate radicals. So you did this. Now, when you squared the left-hand side, what were you left with for an answer? Yes, you were left with 2x minus 1. And what did that equal? 49. Then what did you do? Then you did algebra to isolate x. So you brought that over. 2x equaled 50, x equaled 25. And everybody should have been able to do that, yes? Okay. That is old news. You already know how to do that, as you just proved to yourself. Now we're going to add the grade 11 stuff. And here's what we have to do. This word right here, restrictions. What does the word restriction mean in English? Yeah, you're stopped from doing it, right? So in math class, we have some restrictions. You already know a few of them. For example, don't write this down. Is there a restriction on the value of x there? What is not allowed to be written there? You can have a negative. 1 over negative 2 is negative 1/2. What can't I write there? 0, because you can't divide by 0, right? So in this case, our restriction is x cannot equal 0. Maybe it'll show up on the screen and maybe it won't. Is everybody cool with that? Everybody understands what a restriction is? Maybe it'll show up. Can you think, then, of a restriction that might occur in here? Is there something in there that isn't allowed? So restrictions are values we cannot have mathematically. Now, up here you were all able to find one. Where in 1A is there a spot where we can't have something? First of all, can 5 and 12 change? Is there any option to what 5 and 12 are in this question? This is a yes or no question, guys. Is there any options to 5 and 12? No, because they are constants, correct? Excellent. So we know 5 and 12 are okay. So is there something to do with that square root symbol that restricts us mathematically? There's something about the x, because up here it was the x, wasn't it? What about that x would screw us over? It's an unknown, and it's in a square root, yes? What do we know about square roots? There are some things that we cannot take the square root of. What are they? I can take a square root of 7. It's just an irrational number. I can take a square root of 0. 0 times 0 is 0. But you're getting warmer. Negatives. Can you take a square root of a negative number? Why? Anything you square becomes positive, yes? What is negative 9 squared? 81. So what's the square root of negative 81? Doesn't exist. Everybody with me? So you cannot have a square root of a negative number, yes? So what is this question saying? It is saying that the square root of 2x minus 1, that's not allowed to be negative, yes? So there's a restriction there, agreed? This is how we write the restriction. 2x minus 1 can't be negative, can it? So it must be greater than or equal to what? 0. Now, do you know what to do with that because you were in the 9th grade? Yes, you do, because you were all in the 9th grade. What do you do with that? What do you do whenever you see an x? Isolate it. So what do you think we should do here? Isolate it. How? Add 1 to both sides. So 2x has to be greater than or equal to 1. Now what? Divide by 2. So x has to be greater than or equal to 1/2. Or we can't do this question. Is our x greater than or equal to 1/2? So do we have a possible answer here? Does everyone agree? Because x is bigger than 1/2, so it's not going to mess up our restriction. The last thing we have to do, number 5 or number 4, is check on restrictions and in the equation. Why do we have to check in the equation? Your teacher always tells you to check, but nobody ever does. Why do we have to here? I'll give you a hint. What is the answer to that? Only 4? -4. How many possible answers are there to that question? 2. So how many possible answers are there to the square root of 2x minus 1? There's 2 possible answers, yes? So we are concerned with, I'll come back to that in a sec because I'm running out of room. So check with 25. Can I check in my head? If x is 25, what would go there? 5. So it would be, no. X is 25. What would go there? 25. So it would be the square root of 2 times 25 minus 1. Yes? What's square root? What's 2 times 25? 50 minus 1. What's square root of 49? 7. Is 5 plus 7, 12. So are we okay? So our answer is x equals 25. Is everybody cool with that? Notice how we've done nothing new except discuss restrictions, yes? All right. So now I want you to look at the second question. You've got a list of things to try. What's the first thing you should do in B? What's the first thing we said to do in A? Isolate the radical. Because the radical is the problem, yes? So how will I isolate that radical? What needs to move? Just look at it for a minute and make a decision on what you think you should do. It's not isolated now, is it? So what should move? All of you are going to say the same thing. What were you going to say, Max? Move the n. How many people would move the n? Why? So if you move the n over here, the radical's isolated, right? So that would look like negative 5 minus n equals negative n minus 7, yes? Is that radical isolated? It's a yes or no question, guys. Is that radical alone? It is. Is that radical alone? No, it isn't. So, I will ask you this. Is there a way I can isolate that radical in one step? You could do that. What else could you do? If I take that whole thing and move it over here, what will happen to that sign? It will be positive. So I would have n equals negative 7 plus the root of 5 minus n. Yes? Is the radical isolated? Why not, Cole? 7's there. What can I do to get rid of the 7? If I move it back over here, what happens? So now I have n plus 7 equals the square root of 5 minus n. Now is everything isolated? Excellent. So we completed the first step. Is our radical isolated? Okay. What should we do now to get rid of that radical? Square what? Square the radical. Which means on this side, what do I have? 5 minus n, yeah? What do I have to do to the left side now? Square it. N plus 7 squared is n squared plus 14n plus 49, yes? Everybody agree? Everyone agrees? Okay. Now, what is your logical next step? What do you see here that you don't like? Algebraically speaking, what do you see there that you don't like? Cole. You see too many n's, yes? So what's your goal whenever you see letters? You want to get them together and isolated, yes? So let's do so. If I bring this 5 over here, what happens? We're going to be minus 5, correct? If I bring this n over here, what happens? What am I going to get? It was a negative n. What is it going to be over here? Positive n, yes? Now what do I have? N squared plus 15n plus 44, correct? Does everyone agree? Yes or no? 7 times 7 is 49, and I'm subtracting here, yes? Is everyone okay? Everyone's okay? What does that equal? What did I leave over here? 0. Does that look like something we can do more math on? What would we do with that? Factor it. Okay, so what would that be? N plus 11 and n plus 4. Everyone agree? What does that equal? 0. Now you have to use your brain again. Because this looks weird. What math is happening there? Multiply, yes? And I need this multiplication to equal 0, don't I? What is the only way to get multiplication to equal 0? Something has to multiply by 0, right? So, n plus 11 would have to be 0, wouldn't it? Would that get me 0 here? What else would get me 0? N plus 4 would have to equal 0, wouldn't it? Can you solve those? N would have to be negative 11, or n would have to be negative 4. Am I correct? Does everybody see why? Why is this weird? Because there's two answers. Is there a way to check which the right answer is? Check the restrictions and put back in the original equation, right? So first of all, we need to check restrictions. 5 minus n has to be greater than or equal to 0, doesn't it? So negative n has to be greater than or equal to negative 5, yes? So n has to be less than or equal to positive 5, yes? Because I got to switch the sign. Are both of those less than or equal to positive 5? They are. So they're okay on the restrictions, yes? Everyone agree? So now we got to check. Where do I put those two to check if it is right? back into the original equation, right? So there's an n. What do I put there? Negative 11 or negative 4, right? Okay. So I have negative 11. What's 5 minus minus 11? 16. What's square root of 16? 4. So what I have there is negative 11 plus 4. Does that equal negative 7? Yes. So is negative 11 the right answer? Is it? You guys are killing me. What goes in for n? What goes in for n? What goes in for n? Negative 11. So this would be negative 11, yes? Minus the square root of what? 5 minus negative 11, which is 5 plus 11, yes? So that is going to be negative 11 minus, what is under there? 16. Square root of 16 is what? 4. So it's negative 11 minus 4. Does that equal negative 7? No. So is negative 11 one of our right answers? No. Now we got to check negative 4. Where does negative 4 go? So it's negative 4 minus the square root of what? 5 minus minus 4, which is 5 plus 4, which is negative 4 minus what? 3. Does that equal negative 7? Yes. So that is our one and only right answer. Lots of steps. Anything new? Really, when you think about it, is there anything new to solve these? No. But is there a lot more to think about? It's still just algebra, right? Now that's a big old mess. So let's move on to solve one that's all by itself and nice and easy. Well, not necessarily nice and easy. So let's look at C. Is the radical isolated? Yes. So can we get rid of it? What would we do? Square it. If I square this side, what do I have to do to this side? Square it. So what would I have now? Rewrite it. What would I have on the left? P squared equals what? 2 minus P. Correct? Right? Now I got too many letters, right? I got to get them together. So what should I do? You're going to bring everything over here, yes? So what am I going to have? P squared plus P minus 2 equals what? 0. Now, what can I do with that? I can factor it. What will the answer be? P plus 1, P minus 2. Really? Minus 1 plus 2. There you go. Minus 1 plus 2 equals 0. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean P minus 1 would have to equal? And what does that mean P plus 2 would have to equal? 0. So P must equal what? 1. Or P must equal negative 2. Please tell me you're noticing the pattern. You are noticing the pattern, yes? Okay. Now, am I done? No, because I only have two possible answers, don't I? So what must I now do? I got to go back and check. First thing I got to check are restrictions. What are my restrictions? Square root of 2 minus p has to be, or 2 minus p has to be what? Greater than or equal to 0, correct? Solve it. Negative p has to be greater than or equal to negative 2, yes? And then p has to be less than or equal to what? Less than or equal to 2. What are my options for p? Are they both less than or equal to 2? So they're okay with restrictions, yes? Okay, so they're okay on the restrictions. Then I got to check. First one I check is 1. 1 equals the square root of 2 minus 1. 1 equals, what's 2 minus 1? 1. Square root of 1. What is the square root of 1? Does 1 equal 1? Yes, so is plus 1 okay? It is. Excellent. Now let's check the other one. 2 equals the square root of 2 minus 2. Does that one work? Oh, sorry, it's negative 2. Does negative 2 equal the square root of 4? This is where it gets tricky. What is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is, you guys always want to say 2, don't you? But we just talked a minute ago how it's both, yes? So let me ask you, is this okay? I haven't taught you if it's okay or not. I'm asking you if you think it's okay or not. Do you think that we are looking for a negative root, or are we looking for only a positive root? What do you think? Or either, of course. There's 3 choices here. Negative root, positive root, or either one. What do you think it is? Priyanka, what is your guess? You say we're only looking for a negative root. Because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So you think that's okay. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm asking you, you think that's okay? Because I haven't taught you yet, right? So you think this is fine. All right. Is there anybody that disagrees? Yes. Yeah. If you do it on a calculator, you end up with 2, don't you? Why? Why do you think your calculator always sends you to 2? Pardon me? That's all the calculator knows. The calculator thinks you want a positive number. Okay, thinks. You know what I mean, right? The calculator's programmed to give us the positive root. Excellent. Okay. What else? So, but you're still standing by this being okay. Now you don't know. You talked yourself out of it when you started thinking about your calculator, right? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. Does this make math sense? Does negative 2 equal the square root of 4? Square root of 4 is what? Negative 2 and positive 2, yes? So negative 2 equals negative 2. So it should be okay, shouldn't it? Except it's not really. In this case, we are only looking for the positive root, because it is called the principal. And here's why. How did we get rid of that square root there? We squared it, right? Once we squared it, we opened up the opportunity for positives and negatives. But in the original question, was that ever squared? No. So this had to be positive, didn't it? So that's why we only want the positive root here. Since we only want the positive root, does this one count? No. So the answer to this question, p can only equal 1. Is everybody cool? All right. Let's see if you can handle D by yourselves. What's your first step going to be? You're going to move the n, right, Yoon? Because then your radical's isolated, right?
So we get negative 6n and plus 19 and 2 and plus 2.
Everyone okay with that? Does everyone agree with Yoon's first step? Okay. So now what?
So I squared that. So
Square them both to get rid of that radical, because we don't like the radical, right? And once we square, that opens us up to the negative situation, right? So this is 6n plus 19 equals what?
4 plus
n squared plus 4n plus 4, yes? This is ugly, so what do?
we move all of them over.
We get all our terms together, right? So we can do algebra. N squared, what's 4 and 6? What happens there? Negative 2n, and 19 and 4? Negative 15. Very important. Now, what do I do every time I see a trinomial in math class? Factor it. What is it? Negative 5, 5, and n plus 3. Now, mathematically, that's got to equal 0, that's got to equal 0, yes? What's our shortcut? I just changed the signs, don't I? So n has to be what?
Either 5 or negative 3.
5 or negative 3. Is everybody cool to there? That was grade 10. You should have been able to do that by the end of grade 10. If you were in my class, we did that. Everyone's good to there? Now we add the grade 11 part. We have to check both of these answers. Checking requires 2 steps. One is what? Restrictions. Where in there is a restriction? 6n plus 19 has to be what? Greater than or equal to 0. So sooner or later, there we go. Greater than or equal to 0. 6n has to be greater than or equal to negative 19. N has to be greater than or equal to negative 19 over 6, which is about... Behind me, it's all gone, right? All the work we've just done has disappeared, right? Oh, let's try undo. It's right there, yeah? Undo. That one worked. And what do we get? What is negative 19 over 6? Approximately. It's negative 3, right? N has to be greater than negative 3 and 1/6, right? Are both of those greater than negative 3 and 1/6? So are they okay on restrictions? Okay, so then what do we check? We got to run it through the equation, don't we? So, what's the first one? Negative 5 plus the root of 6 times 5 plus 19 equals 2. What's 6 times 5? Plus 19?
49.
Root of 49? 7. Negative 5 plus 7. Does that equal 2? So is 5 okay? Yes, he's fine. Now we check negative 3. negative n. So it's negative 3 plus the square root of 6 times negative 3 plus 19. Has to equal 2. What's negative 3? 3. What's 6 times negative 3? Negative 18. Negative 18 plus 19? 1. Square root of 1? 3 plus 1. Does 3 plus 1 equal 2? No. So is negative 3 one of our roots? No. So what's the answer to this question? N equals 5. Yes. Here's why. When we did the math, Jazzkirat, we ended up with these two answers, yes? And those two answers, we just proved that one of them is not a real answer, yes? That's why. Because as soon as we square to get rid of that, we are adding in an infinity of new answers, aren't we? Because once we square, that opens us up to negatives, right? So we have to check restrictions as well. Now, what if this had said n had to be greater than or equal to 2? Negative 2. Would that be okay? We would know it was gone. We wouldn't even need to check because it didn't make it into the restrictions. Picking up what I'm putting down? All right. Now, please notice it's just algebra with one extra step, right? What should I do first? Isolate. Root 5a minus 5 equals, what happens over here? Minus 3 plus 8, which is what? Now what? Square both sides. 5a minus 5 equals what? 25. Now what?
Move 5 over.
Right? So what happens there?
5a equal to 30.
5a equals 30. And what does a equal now?
6.
6. Are we good? Have we done the algebra? Yes. Do we know if we have the answer? Algebraically, does this answer work? Yes. Does it work in real life? We don't know until we check two things. What do we check? Restrictions is 1. What's my restriction? 5a minus 5 has to be greater than or equal to 0, yes? So 5a has to be greater than or equal to 5. A has to be greater than or equal to 1. Are we okay with restrictions? Is 6 greater than or equal to 1? So we're halfway there, correct? What's the last thing we got to do? Check. Negative 8 plus the square root of 5 times what? What's my a? 6 minus 5 has to equal negative 3. What's 5 times 6? Minus 5. Square root of 25. Does negative 8 plus 5 equal negative 3? Is this true? Yes. So is this the right answer? Yes. Everybody good? Okay. What do I do with F? Does anything change? Nope. So what do I do with F? Start working on it. Everybody okay with step 1? You guys work. Everybody should be able to get to there, yes? Oops. Oops. Maybe? Yeah. Can everyone get to there? Because that's grade 10, right? Everyone's cool to there, yes? Let's add our grade 11 bit now. Check restrictions. Negative 3m plus 10 has to be greater than or equal to 0, yes? Negative 3m has to be greater than or equal to negative 10. M has to be less than or equal to 10 thirds, which is 3 1/3, right? Are we okay? Are both of those less than 3 1/3? Yes or no? Yep, so we're halfway there. Then we check. Run them through here. 4 plus, now let's shorten this up, right? We're smart enough to do that. What's negative 3 times 2? What's negative 6 plus 10? Positive 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. 4 plus 2 equals, what does m have to equal here? 2. Does 4 plus 2 equal 2? No. So is 2 one of our answers? No. 2 can't be right. So let's check 3. 4 plus the square root of, what's negative 3 times 3? Negative 9. What's negative 9 plus 10? 1. What's the square root of 1? 1. 4 plus the square root of 1 has to equal 3. What's the square root of 1? 1. Does 4 plus 1 equal 3? No. So is this one of our answers? Do either of these answers work? No. So that tells us there is no value of x, or of m, that will work here. Does everybody understand? This one bothers people. Everyone's cool till here. Then we get to here and it's, how can there be no answers? Right? That's what you guys want to know, yes? I'm going to tell you next unit. You just need to know that there's no answers to this question. Good? Oh my barfy goodness. What's wrong with G? G is freaky deaky. What's wrong with G? Yeah, it's hideous. Everything is wrong with G. But let's apply some algebra because we know what we could do. Step 1 was isolate the radical, yes? So, but there's 2 radicals there, isn't there? Can I isolate one of them really easily? What if this was 3? What would you do? You would divide by 3, right? Okay. And that would get rid of the 3, wouldn't it? So what should we do when it's root x? Divide by root x. If I divide this side by root x, what happens here? What happens to these root x's? Gone. So now I have root x minus 7 equals 12 over root x, don't I? Is everyone okay with that? Are those isolated radicals? Is this radical all by itself? Is this radical all by itself? Not quite. But this guy's isolated, yes? What could we do with that? What did we do every time we got to this case? Squared. If we square this side, what do we do to this side? Square it. So let's do that. What do I have on the left? X minus 7. Everyone agree? Okay. What do I have on the right? 144 over what? No. Square root x squared. What is the square root of x squared? X. Did we lose our radical? Did we? Yes or no, guys? Did we lose our radical? So can we do math now? Okay. What would you do if you were in grade 9 and you were faced with that? What about that is ugly? You don't like the x on both sides. Is one of those x's uglier than the other one? Which one do you want to get rid of, Jazz Curate? The what? The 144 one, because we hate fractions, don't we? So how do I get rid of that divided by x? I multiply by x. Holy crap, it's almost like the math we learned in the past is helping us now. If I multiply this side by x, what happens to them? What happens? Cancel out, meaning what's over here? If I multiply the right side by x, what do I got to do to this side? Multiply by x, what do I get? X squared minus 7x. Does that start to look like something with which we can deal? What would you do? Again, think of what you know. Move the 144. Equals 0, giving us a nice trinomial, yes? Can I factor that? What is it? Can I help you guys out? 3 and 4. 9 and 16. Plus 9, x minus 16. So what are my possibilities for x? What are my possibilities for x? Negative 9 or 16. Run them through there. Notice how I'm not even checking restrictions. I trust you all can do restrictions. That's what I did. Oh, you mean down here? You understand why? Okay. So what happens up here? What is the... Can I have the square root of negative 9? No. So is 9 allowed here? No. So let's check 16. What's the square root of 16? 4. 16 minus 7 is what? 9. What's the square root of 9? Is 4 times 3, 12. So 16 works. Now I heard one person say they were so lost right there. Whoever that person was, please notice that every step we've done is something that you already know. Just, you have to put it all together now. We just spent a whole unit factoring those, right? Up until grade 10, that was where factoring ended, right? When we got to there, you're done, yay! Just like in grade 3, when you were able to do 3 plus 4 equals 7, and you thought you were done, and you got your gold star from Mrs. Bad Crumble. And now here we are factoring trinomials using the same math. Now, before I let you loose, I want you to do one thing for me, and you will need to work with your neighbor. I want you to do... It's hard to make these up in my head. Give me a second. I want you to do these. No, I can't do it in my head. Can't make it up in my head. Because I want to make sure it works. Do I have a textbook? Oh, I do. I'm going to cheat. Don't let my bugles fall. Good job, Sarav. Not my buggles. No, they're called bugles. No, I haven't seen your doppelganger since. He hasn't been at karate. You did not see his doppelganger. Okay, everybody ready? I want you to try this one. I'm going to write it out. That's why there's space there for you. I want you to write out... Oh, that one's hideous. This is letter H. 7 plus the square root of 3x equals the square root of 5x plus 4. Oh, Mr. Myers, why? Why? You're so cruel to us. Talk to your neighbor for a second if you are stuck with where to go first. You do. You do. You do. Everyone relax. I'm not giving you any homework tonight. We're not going anywhere past this.
It's the hardest question.
This type is the hardest. But again, it's nothing new. You just keep applying what you know. What about this makes it ugly? There's two radicals, right? So we should get rid of them, shouldn't we? What gets rid of radicals? Squaring. So let's square both sides. Well, the right side squares up nice and easy, doesn't it? What do I get? 5x plus 4. That's easy peasy, yes? But this side, what do I got to do? I got to do FOIL, don't I? Sophie Dolphin! She said a bad word. Finish that question. That's your only homework for tonight. You got one question to finish. And the hint is FOIL. You have never sworn in front of me. I am shocked. That very much surprises me. I'm not going to punish you for it. It's just you've never done it. I'm aghast. You're normally so quiet, and I know how to do this. Yes, you do. Yeah, you do. I warned you guys, this year is hard.